Hello, and welcome to the So Emotional PodCast. Here on the cast, we discuss everything emotions through the lens of attachment, the nervous system, and internal parts work. We're a little irreverent and like to have fun exploring the emotional issues and dynamics that interest us. So come along and hang out. Let's explore the fascinating lands of emotions.
Hi, everyone. Welcome once again to the So Emotional Podcast. This is where we remove the stigma and enigma around the emotional journey, and our goal is to bring a lot more light and consciousness and to normalize the emotional journey so you don't feel lost, alone, crazy, broken, too much, all the above.
Sure.
And I'm your host, Angela Wetzel. I am a trauma-informed relationship coach specializing in attachment and founder of Epic Initiator Coaching. And this is Nick Carl. He is a somatic coach and he's the founder of Safe Anchor. So welcome. So Nick, was there something that you wanted to tell me?
Yeah,
What was
I
that?
hate your guts. I hate you. I hate you.
You know what? I actually hate you too.
Fucking A. You're such a bitch. God damn it.
So, so it's funny. Nick and I were talking about doing another podcast, and we looked at our last one, and it was 6 months ago. And it wasn't actually due to us hating each other. It was more like I was very busy traveling. I was doing something called Fit for Service, which is basically Aubrey Marcus's like spiritual community, and I was traveling everywhere. I think I went on like 9 trips last year. It was crazy. And then, and Nick, I think you've had like a bunch of changes, like job changes. Like there's just been all kinds of stuff happening.
Right.
Just big changes. Like I had stuff in New York that I moved, so just a lot of life changes. And then Nick and I both ended up having our first time ever ayahuasca journey in Costa Rica in February of this year, and some stuff popped off. It was really spicy, and we did actually have some very strong parts come up. And so actually, it's pretty accurate that both of us were like hating the other one, and having like all of these feelings come up, and then but Nick and I, like what we do is we always process and we take our space and we take our time, and that's just one of the things that I've really grown to appreciate about our friendship and this relationship that we've cultivated together. Being that you and I are both like, I think kind of crazy, like I want to say a little crazy, but I mean like wild, like renegade in this idea of how we challenge the idea of, I think, like relationships. You know what I mean? And we can talk more about what I mean by that because I'm being a little bit vague. But yeah, so then what that was like it was like a couple months, right, of processing and stuff. And so now we're in May, and we've had a lot of conversations, and we've taken a lot of space and time and just processed, and here we are wanting to record another podcast and also like share our shit, because I do think one of the most important things in doing this work is like, okay, yes, some people might look up to us as, I mean, okay, whatever. We're not like super huge, important, like famous people, but like through coaching, people do come to look to us for guidance, or our friends, our family, like we're kind of the ones people come to. And I just think it's important to like normalize and talk about like the shit we go through too, because we're human and we're not above it, even though we've studied and probably spent, I don't know, between us like millions of dollars coaching, therapy, books, stuff.
Well, it's like you said, stigma and enigma, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, hatred, right, is pretty fucking spicy. And just because, maybe I've worked through a layer or two, you've worked through a layer or two doesn't mean
Mhm.
that there's more layers. And, the fact that, man, it's getting through, seeing in places where your identification, right, identified with something, it gets really tricky. It gets really tricky because, like, when you think a thing's a thing and your mind has decided that that's what it is, you kind of box
Mhm.
yourself into something, box yourself into an experience.
Yeah.
And feeling, and I guess letting, it's just also just a, like, time and letting go to get other perspectives in there, right? Like, that's the actual work, instead of, I think, I would say a typical way that I would have done relationships before, which I have done relationships before, which is just like,
Mhm.
something came up, now there's a rupture, my mind interprets it, I put it in a nice box, I say that's it, that's the way it is, and I move on, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Nice knowing
Just to
you.
go ahead and do it again later, right? In a different way.
Right. So
Repetition,
it's
compulsion.
like a trail of bodies like in
Right.
the wake, like these dead relationships
Right.
and ruptures and things that we don't always clean up.
Right.
And I don't think anyone's perfect in that realm because
No.
sometimes we have the ability to repair with people and they might not have the ability, or we might have the desire to. And based on that relationship, like for example, in my own experience, one of my past partners would lie so much that I got to the point where I was like, I can't really have a conversation with you because you're not in the place where you're not gonna lie and then come back and like do something even worse and then be like, oh, I'm so sorry. But it was like never really sorry and lying. So it was like that trust wasn't there. So there is something in building trust in yourself and in your friendships or in your partnerships so that there's a foundation to work on. And then, and we'll go in and talk about all this because I know we like briefly touched on what we wanted to dive into. But the other thing that's really interesting is hatred. Hatred is not apathy and it's not meh, I don't care at all. It's not like, it's actually not the opposite of love. It's it's like pain, it's like distorted love. It's like I think there's actually deep pain in that we're trying to heal. So
Hmm.
there's something about hatred. If we actually hate someone, there's a likelihood that we feel powerless in some way around like this person, their perception of us, how we feel around them. Yeah. So there, I just feel like there's a sense of like victimization perhaps, and then, but I believe there has to be deep love. Well, is this always true? I don't know. But I think in friendships, partnerships, like relationships, I do think often that in order for there to be deep hate, there must be some form of love there. But now, like my brain was just thinking about like hate as a resistance piece. Like when people have very strong reactions to things, it's like I'm trying to think of an example. Like people that get very triggered online about, I don't know, like a sports team maybe. Let's say someone hates another sports team and they're like, I hate this or I hate that. It's like there's a kernel of powerlessness. I think there's a kernel of fear. And I think there's like a seed of maybe great love of something, like of a value of something that feels like it's being threatened, perhaps. So it could even be like self-love, self-protection that is creating this like external enemy. But I would love to hear your thoughts on just like hatred and what you think it is.
So I want to kind of contextualize it a little bit to put it in sort of a little bit of the story of what was happening, right? So you and I
Yeah, yeah,
decided to
yeah.
go do
That's a good idea to do.
ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Okay. We decided to go do ayahuasca. And a bunch of people said this. I have now experienced it to be true, but that is the whole process, the whole like influence of that begins when you make the decision to go, right? And so from going until now, that's like a whole 6 months in and of itself or something, right? So,
Yeah, December was like
right.
the beginning.
So here we are, like, poking around down in the deep nether regions of our spirit, soul, mind, whatever the hell these types of strong medicines can interact with. And, you know, it comes time for us to actually, suit up and ride. And, our paths cross when we're traveling to get there, you know? And so I think that probably both of us are already like under a lot of stress. There's already a lot of stress in the system, right? Right. Uh, and so, one of the things you mentioned about Robbie earlier, right? About lying, right? Lying to me, yeah, whatever it is, it's so misattuned, but it falls outside of like your boundaries. Like you wouldn't let somebody lie to you. You wouldn't let somebody like
Right.
actively abuse you,
Yeah.
Um, and I think that at least in our relationship, right? There's like there's no active, conscious, like pointed abuse, right? There's misattunements, right? There's misunderstandings, right? And there's
Yeah.
obviously projections happening. But to me, that falls outside of that's actually inside of my boundaries, right? That I will actually accept that. It still hurts. I
Yeah.
still then fight back and have a victim reaction and all these things, but
Well,
hatred. But sorry, but the hatred. I just want to
yeah.
say it's just scraping for me. It's just scraping into some kind of like primordial or like primary misattunement, right? It's like, what's the first misattunement, right? How like what's like what's the first cut, right? And how does that live in my being, and how does it exist in my emotional body and in my mind? I think for me that is so long ago, right? That it just comes completely through the unconscious, and then is projected out onto things, right? And so it's in this story, right? Story that I tell myself from my own experience, and goddamn, I was right, mix in a little righteousness in there, and then it's just like card key access pass into, oh, this is here for you, this exists here, right? And so card key access pass into like, oh, let's open it up, what's in there? Oh, you're really fucking mad about people not paying attention to you. Oh, you're really fucking mad that somebody wasn't soft and caring and just like radiantly loving toward you all the time, right? And when you see something out there in the world, looking at you, that all of a sudden mirrors that, right? Then it's like big. It's big. It's big shame, right? It's big anger. It's big hurt. Like it's a lot of like pain and sorrow, you know. And
Yeah.
I think to myself, what a wonderful world. No, I think to myself, uh, I
I
think
was
to
wondering if you
myself,
were to sing that.
how the hell, how the hell can't somebody see me, right? How the hell can't somebody feel me, right? Like, why would you do that, And
Yeah.
it is, and it was kind of
Yeah.
pouty, like it did have, there's some kid flavors in there, but, also with everything that was happening, there was a lot happening, right? There just ends up, uh, I don't know. It also feels like kind of magical that like there's all this happening, there's this medicine that's coming in, and then there's these things coming out, right? Um, but like our impetus to want to share, it's really just to reflect, right? That we're human beings. Uh, I can I can point all my guns at you and fire away because like, I've decided that like that was enough. That was enough of a reason to hate your guts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because there wasn't a lot of wiggle room really in the mindset of that. Like that consciousness in that place, like, felt those things and was ready to fight, you know. But as time goes by, right, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
that, whatever that was, is just kind of, God bless, and I want to like care for him and be with him, but sort of is left behind. It's just like, it's just sort of the magic of time, time and space. And
But I would argue not just time and space, but active contemplation and reflection and
mm,
the emotional work, because if you just have time and space, you just have a gap, you have a
mm,
void, but without that consciousness and those actions attached to it, there's no interfacing with the thing that happened. Therefore,
okay.
just time and
So
space, I don't believe
so on
cures,
on that tip,
but as an element.
on that tip, as an adult now, when I spend time with myself and I like reflect on those things, I am not like this insignificant, like completely dependent child anymore, right? I am like a activated, alive, connected, resourced, uh, adult human being, right? And I
Mhm,
think it's probably just spending time in that energy, in that like
mhm,
reality, in that consciousness, that those scared, wounded, and now at this point very almost ancient, right? Parts of me are reflected into the now, and my being now has a resonance, has space, has force, has power, right? And it didn't push it out because that didn't seem like that was like warranted, or I didn't want to do that. I tried to bring these parts in and feel them and feel how wild they are and feel how hurt they are, and just to be with them. And I would ask questions. I didn't get a lot of answers, but I just spent time with them. And then slowly there's
mhm,
just kind of like an unraveling and a settling. And then finally, like, like a clarity, like clearness. Right.
mhm. The one thing that I was gonna say when I didn't mean to interrupt you as you were talking, but you said something that I felt like was important. Like you were talking about that the way that our relationship works is like that there's no like active intentional abuse or even the when you can say abuse, because like I mean it depends on a person's definition of like abuse, right?
Right.
But I feel like there was something important about what you said there, because it's important to look at what our own needs and our own parameters, like our own values for whether or not we will engage in a relationship and whether we will continue that relationship. So, the thing that I had said before about this past partner is, and this was like early on in my relationships, and the issue was because of the lying, which is self-protection. It's so much self-protection, and there was no consciousness around the desire to be fully conscious, to come into a space where that was possible with that person, and then that fell outside of my values or my ability to be able to engage with that person. And so repair with that person, like actually in person, hasn't been available. But I liked what you said about that. It's like understanding what's happening in terms of like not just the circumstances, but the energetic exchange of what's happening. And sometimes I think in relationships, people can be unconsciously abusive and then like actually abusive. And it depends on the skill set of that person, the skill set of their partner or the other person that they're engaging with, about whether or not it's sustainable to move forward with like all of these ruptures when there are painful things going on, and then the behavior isn't changing past, I don't know, 3, 4 instances of it. And then of
Right.
course this is like a whole other
Right.
conversation about knowing boundaries, being aware of our internal feelings and the fluctuations in our energy, what we're attracting or calling to us from other people, as well as our ability to express our new boundaries and those changes to our partners, and then to give their nervous system the time to take on those behavioral requests, to process them, to start seeing their own parts or own involvement in that, and whether or not they want to continue in that new behavior and all of that. So it is a complex thing. But I liked that you brought it up, and I thought it was important to say. Did that make sense?
It did.
Okay.
I think that I don't know, 10 years ago or something, like some of this language, some of the being able to see into these dimensions of parts, we're talking IFS language, right?
Yeah,
Internal
internal
parts,
feelings.
and then understanding understanding when you're inside the spirit, because it really is a spirit that comes into you, a projective spirit. So there's a part of you, usually wounded. I don't know if there can be healed parts that can come through. Probably can. Uh,
Sure.
say 10 years ago, it would have just been, I just took, when wounded parts would take control of me, and then I would act out and I would project on people. That's just me. That's just who I am. It's just a part of me, right?
Or it's just who they are, and it's like taking everything at face value.
Right,
I'm this way, that person's just that way, and like I'm right and they're wrong, or maybe they're right and I'm wrong, or whatever. It's like kind of black and white.
right. And and I don't think that it's like a panacea just to even be doing this work, right? Which is trying to sense in, have consciousness in, take accountability for those, right? Just because in the time that I've known you, right, I have felt vindicated enough to like energetically, right, point the
Stab,
guns your direction.
stabby McStabberton.
Stabby McStabberson, 5, 6, maybe 10 times or something.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And I can't, I, I can connect with consciousness and stuff afterwards. And I have even connect with like, oh, when I feel like I'm the victim, that gives me carte blanche to attack people. Like that was a big learning for me. That didn't even happen that long ago. Uh, so I don't know, like, right, drawing boundaries and saying like, all right, that's enough, Stabby, get the fuck, yeah, GTFO, right? But
Well, not like GTFO, but like, come here, let me understand you. Let me take the knife out of your hand, but let me listen to you. I'm not gonna
mm,
let you drive the bus.
mm.
Because when you drive the bus, you go to the person you're mad at and you stab them. And I just need you in the back seat with eating your Cheerios and chilling.
So Stabby, parts, projection, right? Um, but it is light, especially on this side, like a few months out or enough time to see. It's There is some like light that's been shed. There is some like clarity of like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, or like a depth into like I could have told you that something resembling a part like that and a sensitivity like that existed inside of me. But to be confronted that like sort of deeply in a sustained way for a little while really gets it out into the sunshine.
Yeah. Shall we like tell the stories? I mean, obviously we'll be telling the story of like what happened, but from that consciousness place where we're aware
All right, you
like
pick
of
one. Go ahead. Go
what
ahead.
we saw. Well, I was just wondering like how much context would you like to give in terms of like maybe anxious and avoidant parts that show up in each of us, and like navigating the landscape of just like friendship with some of these dynamics?
Okay. Should we tell this feels really like, ugh. I'm just
Like
gonna,
vulnerable, right?
yeah. It's because
Well, but the thing is like though, like up to you, or like we can decide, but I understand.
let's just start at the beginning.
Okay.
Let's just start at the beginning.
Okay.
I've arrived in Houston, showed up to Angela's. She picked me up from the airport. Oh,
Well,
no,
well,
sorry.
well, I meant the overall, like
No.
the idea of like our, like how we became friends, and then some of those pieces there that add to the overall story of it. Do you feel
Okay.
comfortable sharing that stuff?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Do you want to tell it or should I tell it?
You tell it and then I'll tell it correctly.
Wait, what? I tell it and then what?
I'll tell it correctly.
Oh, okay. Oh gosh, where do I start? Well, so initially, I'm trying to think of how far back to go, but I also don't want to go too far back also. But basically, okay, we'll just
When
go.
we started the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good place. Okay. So the thing about Nick and I is that we were having like such great conversations, and I'd had this realization. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, Nick is another practitioner. There's so much to talk about. And this was like kind of when we were getting to know each other like more, that I was just like, hey, someone threw this idea out when I was in Nashville, and they said I should do a podcast. I've been thinking about doing a podcast. And then we were having these conversations on the phone, and like they were always so like juicy and deep, and like all kinds of topics, and because like you and I are both like well read, like we like to read and read everything and
Nerdy.
study
Right.
super, yeah, we like nerd out. So it was just this like super fun dynamic. And then I think moving forward, there were obviously some attachment things that started to show up. And to me, like from my perspective, it reminded me of a lot of things, a lot of kind of relationships that I've had in the past. And there was like this, always a similar flavor of like someone being maybe more interested in getting close to me, or maybe that relationship being more, and me feeling like I wasn't interested in that way. And yet I wanted friendship, or I wanted the connection. And I realized, I think, honestly, after thinking about this and reflecting on it, I think it has a lot to do with like my mother wound of this like enmeshment piece, where it's like, and just an energetic thing around my mom being more anxious and like wanting to attach to me in a certain way, which is at the heart of my more avoidant style like behaviors, like where they come from. And then of course, like I have my own anxiousness, and that comes from, I think, probably my dad not being around or whatever, like probably a mixture of things. But so in this case, yeah, it was like for me enjoying our friendship, and just kind of knowing, that it's friendship, but not more than friendship. And then I know that like you had other parts that were coming up too.
Big time.
And then, so yeah, so then we started to have like interactions. And I don't even remember like when it started popping off, but it started popping off like I think the more that we did podcasts and the more that we talked about like the production of them and just like became closer. Basically, we got closer and we became better and better friends. And as we became like closer as friends, like then all these dynamics started to surface, which and like here's the thing, because it like goes back to me of this like lifelong question of, can men and women be friends? Can they be friends without there being ulterior motives? I've had friends give me advice like, hey, if someone likes you and you don't necessarily like them back in the same way, like you should not be their friend because you should protect their feelings. And I was like, I don't know about that, because I'm like, shouldn't I treat myself as a sovereign being? And if I appreciate and love this human, shouldn't I also approach them as a sovereign being and give them the chance to be a part of the relationship? Like let me make my decision about whether I'm available to be in this like shape or this structure, and then give them the opportunity, which is basically like what we talked about like a lot. And it was uncomfortable for me because I could feel all of my parts come up and like stuff around receiving anything. Like is this conditional, and is there something behind this? Like, is it manipulative? So I had all these fears, and you were always so good at talking those things through with me. And then on the other side, it was like we would like kind of we started triggering each other. And so I just remember just maybe some energy sometimes around me feeling like overwhelmed or distracted. Like if like you are so you have such a strong ability, and I think this is why you're so good at the somatic stuff, is because you are like so on it when it's like if someone is present or not. I think you know that so well. And I think you have a skill for like knowing where someone's like kind of their consciousness or their focus or their attention is. But the interesting thing is like when I would get triggered at times, and that wasn't you that I was necessarily triggered by, it was like life that I was triggered by. And then I would kind of like dissociate. And when I would like dissociate or get overwhelmed, then my attention would get fragmented. And then I might go into some like automatic thing of like, I'm not paying attention, or maybe like I would open my like an app on my phone to go grab something that we talked about, but it, in my perception, that it would activate something in you, and then there was like a drive-by shanking that would happen like pretty fast, right? And but the other thing that I always thought in doing this was like, in some ways I felt maybe partially that it was like kind of unfair, because even though I felt discomfort, and there was definitely a growing edge for me to be in a friendship like this, where it's actually, there is a lot of intimacy. And I did not like the shankings because, that it was vulnerable, and that never felt good. But also I felt such a sense of like awe and respect for your courage to purposefully put yourself into a situation that was so wildly like on this like growth edge that I think most people would not consciously do so. I don't know if I ever told you that.
No, that was a pretty great compliment.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just so funny because at the time, I'm on the heels of a rupture in a relationship that kind of shattered my world, and how it shattered it actually, it wasn't a shattering, it was like a birthing, right? It was like, oh, here you go. Here's access to what you've been holding back for your entire life. And had done lots and lots of connecting work, right? Internal connecting work, but there's still so many parts of me that are really raw, really, really raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we start our relationship, it's like, you're pretty cool, you're cute, and you pay attention to me, and then here comes this really desperate part of me that desperately wants to be like held, you know. Uh, and then kind of at the same time too, here comes like a shame part. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't show anybody that. This isn't the place or time for that. Don't do that. And it's just like this battle starts to like happen internally,
Mm-hmm.
and you, to your grace, like, I've always been super thankful that you weren't like, ew, but God, gross. All right, later, weirdo, do shit like that, right? You actually maintained and held space. And I don't know how many times, like how many processes, real like rip 'em processes that we did where I just screamed and cried and went totally fucking nuts, right? Just like letting this energy out. And you sat there and were with me, right? Uh, yeah, super, super, super helpful. But it's like I had been birthed. Like I didn't, who knows where I was,
Mm-hmm.
But then this lady shows up. She's like, "Hey, you wanna get access to that giant thing that's driving you totally fucking nuts?" I'm like, this is not conscious, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know, like sort of immediately in our relationship, it's like we enter the room, also all our parts enter the chat, right? And so
Yeah.
then you and I have had to like, okay, it's like, like forgive each other, get mad at each other, like hate each other. But then but these are all these sort of the ancillary consciousnesses and emotions that are interconnected with these parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's anything about how you and I hang out or are as people that gets these things to come to the fore, Could just be a giant gift we're given. But
Thank
I also,
you.
yeah, but also I just think that like we're just sort of in similar places in our own evolution, what we're having access to at the time, this particular times in our life. So, uh, but it has been very difficult, very difficult. It's been very challenging, but
Yeah.
also extremely rewarding too, because, uh, you know, taking time, taking space, right? Not just like stamping a red A on my forehead and get the fuck out of here, weirdo. You suck. You've sucked enough. Like that, like kind of ultimate judgment never came my way. And like similarly, like yeah, I was real, real, real pissed at you. But I don't think it's ever been a reflection of like who you are, right? Or like the true sort of like respect and actual love that I have for you. So thanks for that.
You make me cry. I'm crying a little. Um, I was gonna say
Parts,
something.
pieces. hatred.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess as we like flash forward to February, like we can fill in some of those other pieces. But so
But
well actually maybe we should
you talked about so that this is that's the beginning of our relationship. It's like we start to
right.
be we start to work on this project together, and then like immediately here comes some stuff,
There's stuff.
and we're
Yeah.
doing like kind of lots of work to like get through those things, and some of those like I don't know how long that took. What did that take? Like 6 months or a year of like it just seemed to be like on this sort
Right.
of
Well
like
then,
it's like totally gone. It's not like present. I'm just here and like normal, feel normal and like balance. And then it's just like this, it like gets me again.
yeah, the so the other thing that I was thinking about, so like the first time we met in person though was like wasn't it like April of 2023 or something?
Sure.
Something like that. Because remember, so we went to go see Abraham Hicks in Austin, and you had flown in to go do that, and we had this like super fun weekend. And we met Lisa, the
Mhm.
van life girl or whatever her name is. She has like she's so cool. But we had this like amazing time at Abraham Hicks, and then we were doing some like nature walks and things, and then because I think this is kind of important to what like sort of what happened, and also things that started to happen with my nervous system, like
Mhm.
around like parts, like my parts getting more activated. And, you know, oh, this is what it was. When you were talking about this part that you had and like the desperate part that like wanted to be held and that felt like shame about it too. It's like I have felt that part in me. Like I've been that partner too. So I've been on the other side of that. And this last partnership that I was in, like it brought up so much of that, like super anxious, rage and revenge. And like I had like two or three, maybe four. I think I had all the therapists that I had like during that time because I needed so much help. And then I had my good friend, Jenny, who was like been in therapy for so long that she could like really help ground me. And so it was like I have so much compassion for that part and I get it. And also like being on the other side of it, it like activated my avoidance stuff too. And so like I remember there was an evening where like something happened and you got triggered, and I don't remember what it was, but you had asked me for like a hug. And then I was just like, my parts were like, no, not safe to give a hug. Like this energy feels hungry. Like it feels like a hungry baby. And I feel like I have starving babies like inside. And I'm just like, so I'm just like, no. But then I said, asked me later, like, maybe I can give you a hug later. And then there was something in that moment. If you want to share that part, you may. And if not, we can.
I don't remember how this goes.
You, from what I saw, like, it like super, I think there was like a feeling of like major rejection or something. And then it
Mm.
like
Hmm.
triggering like just a lot of feelings for you. And this moment had actually happened to me like quite a few times, like in my past, where it was like someone coming to me and then in that moment being like, no, like I don't want to return affection. Or there was this thing that happened in high school as well. It was very, I guess I can tell it really quickly. I don't know what happened to this kid, but he was super nice. He was a friend of mine. We went to homecoming. He was drinking a whole lot in the limo that we had had, and then he asked me to be his girlfriend around everybody. And he and I had had many conversations about just friends. And then he broke down into tears. He started hysterically sobbing and asking, like, why not? Why? And it was like mortifying for me, but also and because it was so much energy coming at me, and I was just like, what what is this? And I was very firm and I was very kind to him, but I'll say over the years, like there has been a theme in some of this like energy, and I do believe it's not just from enmeshment. I believe it's like there's early childhood trauma stuff too that I've been like healing, but I believe it's been a theme for a reason. And so with your feelings of like perhaps rejection and just having a lot of emotion there, like I remember feeling like really unsafe, like just so unsafe. And then like since we live in different cities and like most of what we do, it's like we talk on the phone and we have our podcast, and like that seems to work well for our nervous systems, given that when we're together there's like this triggering that happens, right? And it seems like when we up the challenge level, and we'll talk more about the ayahuasca journey and what happened, but I think that in-person event like had created this whoa around my nervous system. So I think it precipitated and added to, like there was an accumulation to what happened. So
Well, that same interaction, right? So I come and ask you for a hug. You say maybe later or whatever. Feel all this rejection and stuff, and then you feel safe from all the feeling that's coming out of me. Is the exact same thing that happens later, right? Kinda ish. Yes.
wait, say that again.
I just mean the energetic structure of the situation you just described, which was a couple of years ago, mirrors pretty closely what happens again.
What happened with
What happens again later on?
uh I don't it felt different to me.
Hmm.
Well, no, it felt different. No, it felt different.
Hmm.
It was different. And different. I don't know. It didn't feel like it was the same circumstance, because when so like the deal was is like, because like Nebraska, like Omaha apparently, like it's not good for like international flights, right? It's like crazy, right?
Yeah, and
It's not great.
it's not an
Depends.
international airport. You got to go
Right, it's
somewhere else.
right. So it's like, yeah. So you were either gonna fly into Dallas, or you were thinking about flying into Houston, where I live. And so I remember having this conversation with myself where I was just like, it's not a big deal. Like I can manage that. But it wasn't like an inspired, like, oh yeah, that would be great. And
Right.
I realized that I wasn't listening to my inspiration, but probably doing some like caretaking, or just like not trying to rock the boat.
Right.
But then,
And I'm doing the same thing. It's like I'm operating off of fear because I didn't want to necessarily go all that way by myself, right? And
yeah,
then also not like just paying respect and just being real with whenever we try to like, I I think it's like not giving proper respect to like yeah, we are friends. We can be cool, but it operates like this. It is like this. So just respect it like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And not doing that.
So then there were just some, like, I think my nervous system was already on high alert, just like being in, like, you being in my space, and then what happened before. And then also, like, the other thing that I think people don't always think about, and I, like, probably haven't always been super aware of the challenge level that traveling with people, or having, like, for one, having a different nervous system like in your space depending on your history with that person is a certain challenge level. Going to someone else's space like is also a challenge level, because now it's like, now we're navigating proximity,
Right.
right?
Well,
And distance in a way.
people whose nervous system that like I'm reactive to, so it'd be like, would I have done that with my mother? No, I wouldn't have, right? I can give you a list of people that I never would have done a trip like that or try to travel like that in that way, right? But I just
Right.
think that no, me and Angela were cool, you know. We communicate on a regular basis. No, it's cool. And it's just like, well, yeah, but it's not that simple. It's just not that
Right.
simple.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then, on top of that, it's like for me, realizing my own stuff around travel, and like by this point I'm already sleep deprived, like probably even the night before I'm already sleep deprived. I get super stressed around like packing, and then on top of that I think just like having this other nervous system, and having that awareness of that, and just like the dynamics. And then ayahuasca for the first time is like kind of a
It's a
big
lot.
looming thing of like, what's it going to be? Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be good? Is it, what's going to happen? Just lots of different pressures and things. So that we have like a challenge level increase. And so we're already like getting on each other's stuff like that night. And then on the plane, like I'm so exhausted. I'm like trying to sleep. And then I believe Nick, I mean, you can tell me what was going on, but I think you were like, I don't know, what
I
was
was
going
sh-
on with you?
I was showing you the weather on my phone.
Right. Well, but you were showing me the weather, but like what was happening for you emotionally with, like, do you recall the like subtext, the emotional like,
Yeah.
yeah, subtext of
I mean,
those
subtext
things that
is
were
like
happening?
anytime I'm in your space, it's eggshells. That's what I do. Just eggshells, right? Just walk on eggshells. You try to be careful. But but then it's like when it goes off the rails, it's like I'm already careful and it's like, can't you see I'm being careful? It's like, God damn it. So but super reactive, right?
Okay, so there was like emotionally you're already just in a
Yeah,
somewhat
and
dysregulated state.
getting on the plane, I like yelled at a guy, like yeah, I'm already like on fleek.
Is it because, is there like is there anxiety around flying too? Like what are all the things for you like that you're aware of? Like are you aware of the intersections of just these different parts that are feeling hypervigilant in that moment?
Yeah, there for a long time in my adult life, any kind of travel, really,
Mm-hmm.
beyond like a drive, to my friend's house or something, introduced a very deep and very strong, but very unconscious fear in me,
Yeah.
and it manifests because I've been around for a while of
Mm-hmm.
me like fucking attacking people.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I felt like from my perception, it felt like you were really anxious. Like it felt like there was a lot of fear and stuff
Yeah. I
from
mean,
my perspective. But it also felt like you were pretending to not be or something, kind
mm,
of. And then like I remember I was trying to sleep, and I just like your elbows were like bumping into me, and then I just was like, dude, like I'm over here by the window and I'm still being bumped into, and I'm like listening to this audiobook and I'm really just like trying to sleep. And so I was just like so tired and so like, please, I just need to sleep and I just need to like be self-contained. And then it felt like all this was happening over here, and I'm just like, again, it's that same feeling of like I don't have the space to manage this too, which is it's kind of like those same feelings in that regard, which is like this avoidant. I feel like that's an avoidant flavor of like
Mm.
I'm already like just probably overexposed or having a lot going on, and my way of dealing is to go within and like try to relax and sleep and self-soothe and whatever in whatever ways I'm that's happening. And then what I've found for when I've been the anxious partner too is like needing some form of connection, desiring communication, like anything that is moving towards in any way, in any like minute way of like just trying to regulate. And so then it's like whatever potential thing comes up or even excuse or anything to make that connection, then it's like whether or not I've been conscious of it, fully conscious of it, it's like that energy is still moving towards like seeking that assurance. And so that was like some of I think what happened on the plane. But I think then you had said you felt like really rejected by me.
I don't know if possibly, but it's in like a particular type of flavor, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so I won't argue with because I think that it's true, right?
Oh
Uh,
no. It what you said was that you felt that it never felt good to you to feel like you were annoying or that someone was annoyed with you. There was something that you said. I don't remember exactly how you said
mm.
it, but I thought maybe it was that.
I think that I would tend to agree that like inside of the anxious consciousness, right? It's like that's the starting block. That's everything that everything is processed through.
Hmm.
Which I think is a little bit stark, but it's like one way to look at it. So it's like every possible move, every possible interaction, every possible thing that happens in one's life 24/7 is based from that as like a starting point.
Hmm.
The tricky thing is that that's not how like it rolls, right? Because that's in the unconscious, you know?
Hmm.
So even though that may be true, I think, yeah, I was trying to act, right? I was trying to act cool. Just be cool. Because I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're in a tube in the sky, you know? Don't freak out, you know? And you know, as I saw you against the window, giving all of the messages, which not a dummy, of please do not talk to me, right? And I sat there for a moment. I was like, huh. She's giving all the messages of please don't talk to me. What should I do? And I was like, and I did the math, and I was like, well, the math is, and maybe this is anxious attachment math, right? The math is all signs point to no. What do I do? Go forward, right? Which is like, oh, I got to show her this thing. I got to show her this thing. It shouldn't be a big deal. Tap it, tap, 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 tap it, tap, tap. And you look over and you're like, didn't you read all the fucking signs, you fucking freak? I'm interpreting all this, right?
Right.
And
That was not my subtext, by the way, but probably the energy of it was like,
yeah,
what?
right,
Yeah.
right. And then the, well, I mean, it just is what it is. The you're bumping me, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That gets that like is like that's into like not only are like you annoying, but actually your being is annoying. Your space is annoying. Your body is annoying, right?
Mm.
And that was like, that's the Rubicon. Now you've done it.
Okay.
Now we're in war. Now this is war. And in my head, I was like, I can't even say the words. They're so naughty. I was like, you fucking right.
See you next Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like, but then it also comes with like some kind of resolve, right? It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. This is what we're gonna do. All right. Because I ain't backing down.
Yeah. Right. So like this was the start of
This is
our
the start of the trip.
journey. So then
So it's like you touched the shame button, the rejection button,
like all the
the
buttons.
like the don't exist button, the like, it's just like going to the piano and hitting all the keys.
Yeah.
And it happens again. I've seen this, but it happens again in the victim triangle. Once you become the victim, right? Then all options are on the table, right? Then it is
Right.
war.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but this is like the practice thing because I will not stay a victim. I will kill before I'm made into a victim.
Right. Well, which is still a victim. That's just murdering.
Right.
It's just a
But
victim that kills.
but I just mean that like
Like not, you don't stay in the victim position, you will move into the persecutor
right.
or the
And
fixer helper, but more than likely you're what is Lynn calls it, Lynn Forrest, she calls it like the first gate something. It's like, are you a first gate persecutor? Are you a first gate helper fixer? Are you a
right,
first gate victim? So
right.
it's like our first, like our starting gate position of where we usually go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering for me if if I began with persecutor because of like, this is just how I've seen myself around sleep. Like, I'm not nice. If I'm sleep deprived, I'm not a nice person to people. Like, if feel like I'm like, I need sleep, I know
Yeah,
I
because
don't.
then you're just the victim of not having any sleep, which is like some kind of like it is like a primary. And I do the same thing. If I'm actually really tired,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it is like a access to
So then I feel irritated, I feel angry, but it's
right,
like interestingly enough, like my dad definitely was like that, like showed so much of that. So there's like correlation there, but it feels like it moves really fast from victim into persecutor as
mm,
well. Like
yeah,
you're fucking up my sleep, and then
right, right,
then it's like we have we have like victim persecutor, like
right.
happening really quickly.
And I think that like, in that moment when I got really angry, if I could have stayed with the because it's a microsecond that go to the vulnerability or the actual pain, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like turning on a dime super quickly, going into pain, then into hatred, right? And so that's like one of those like layered things of hatred, right? It's like what's below hatred or which is a cousin of anger, it's a flavor of anger. It's hurt, right? It's hurt and it's pain.
Yeah.
And it's probably protective, ish. I
Sure.
don't know, but
Yeah, for sure. It's
right,
protective.
right,
Well, because instead of feeling that hurt, if we can be like, well, that person, like they're the one that they did this, so I
hmm
can hate them, then I feel powerful, and then especially like if we don't have the resources in that moment, or if we've never had the resources to go in and be able to feel that vulnerability, it makes sense to go into that like more power. It feels more powerful, like puffed up
right.
hatred.
And I will say that even just in telling you this, retelling the story now to you in this space, right?
Yeah.
That was the first time that I connected with that.
Wow. Holy shit.
Just because in the memory it just races right into anger and blame and finger pointing, right?
Right.
Just
So
very quickly.
it's so fascinating you say that because so often, like in the moment, like things happen so quickly. And then it's like we're at this point, we've arrived at this point energetically, emotionally, where like Abraham Hicks would call this like post-manifestational awareness. Like I'm already hating this person, or I already, or in some cases, like we're acting out on that behavior. So we've done the thing. Then if we dial it back, then we're in like mid manifestation, like, oh, I'm doing something here. I'm watching myself like as I do it. Then we dial it back further. I'm noticing the impulse, and then we go back further, and we can start to become aware of the emotions before we like take the train to crazy town. And what you're talking about, which I love, is like replaying the tapes. When we replay the tapes, we have the ability to slow it down, rewind it, like go into that dimensional space and like access in slow-mo, because like our body keeps the record of all those things. And then if it's a familiar pattern, then all those things are already connected. And it's like you have got all the footage that you need to go in and like work with that.
But in my spending time with it, and even like going through it, it wasn't in a way like this, which is speaking out loud, right? Having somebody else to hold space for it, like, and then having the other person who happened to be there, right, to give the other sort of perspective. So it just is a way better canvas anyway.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
kind of
So
interesting. But it's also
it
interesting too. So
is.
it's like we sort of start our trip. If it was just that one thing, then I
Mm-hmm.
think that just like natural repair, however that goes, is sort of like easier,
Yeah.
right?
Like it's like kind of forgive, like smooth it over, no big deal.
Right.
But then I'm not sure what all of it was, because it was like the rest of the trip wasn't necessarily like horrible after that. But there, we were still talking and stuff, and going through like what customs or whatever. And then we got on the van. But then it's like somehow through the trip, it's like I was personally becoming more and more sleep deprived as the week went on. And then I know we weren't even staying in the same place, so we weren't really seeing each other that much. And like, I don't know, it was like we weren't really talking to each other that much either at all. So it felt like after we parted ways at the airport, even though we were on the van, it was like you were in this different place, and it just felt like we were in like kind of an energetic standoff where it's like, I really don't desire to talk to this person right now. So we were kind of in our separate ways. So
Yeah.
we didn't repair,
Because you're a terrible person.
obviously. Obviously, I'm horrible. I'm gonna see you next Tuesday. So then we this was so that was Sunday night, or Sunday we traveled. This was Tuesday, our first ceremony. And the order of how things went, it's a little bit fuzzy, but at some point after like my first cup or something, you're sitting outside. I think you've done one cup. And like I go up to you and you're talking about, I forget what you mentioned something, like it's not all super clear, but you were saying like maybe that you felt scared, that you felt like, I'm gonna paraphrase and then you can tell me, but you were, I think, feeling like this, like ayahuasca was like being really bossy, or like you didn't have any choice, like it was just telling you what to do and like forcing you, and it felt like super harsh. And then but energetically it felt like I didn't feel all the fear under it. I felt instead like that persecutor energy that felt more frustrated and angry, but not, under that. And I remember saying something like, well, if you have all that stuff like coming up, like I would suggest I recommend getting another cup. Like I think you should go get another one. And then you said something like, you can't reach me, or no, maybe I said, I think I said something like, whatever you had said, I was reflecting back to you. And normally I feel like we have a rapport where we don't always need like that invitation to reflect on what's seen. But I think that based on like where we left things, like we weren't in a good space to be, and I
Right.
wasn't considering it. Also, I was like in this medicine
Yeah. Well, you're
state.
in sleep deprived, like,
I'm
yeah.
I'm in sleep deprived medicine
But you're
state.
right about that. Like when you walk up, it's in all of the other energy that we have created so far on the trip steps into the chat as well, right?
Right.
And
But
it's
for
all there.
me in that moment, I'm not thinking about any of that other stuff. Like for me, it wasn't there.
Hmm.
And so I was just like, I think the kind of energy that I have often with you is a little bit more like tough love, a little bit like I'm not, I mean, I can be gentle. I have been very gentle, I think, in a lot of ways, but in that moment, like just the way that I was responding was a bit more like it felt probably also just felt like ayahuasca, like you should go, like telling you what to do. And then I was noticing whatever you were saying, I was like, it sounds like you're enmeshed with these parts. Like it's just very enmeshed. And you said something like, you can't reach me. And I was like, but I already have. Like I'm giving you something to push against. So you know what's like, you know it's there, right? But something you pointed out later, which was really important, is that if one is truly enmeshed, can we fucking see it? Is it going to be easy to like grasp for that? And then also, there was just a lot of shit going on in that moment. So it wasn't like you were open to be like, oh, I'm enmeshed. Let me think about it. Let me try to step back. And then the other thing that you told me later, which I didn't realize, is like you said that you were really, really scared. But I was getting this like puffed up version instead of like your vulnerability, you know? So then I'm thinking, okay, he's a little irritated with me, but it's not a big deal. But then I don't remember, I'm trying to remember what else happened. But I was like, okay. And then it was like after that, it became more apparent that we were not on good terms.
Yeah. So that comes to me, like I said, in the context of everything we've created before. So it's like
Hmm.
you take out all the time and it's just like the next conversation with you, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
nothing has been repaired. And
right.
the last thing I said to you in my own head was that, like, you fucking, right? Like,
You can say it.
you fucking cunt.
Yeah.
Like, I was so fucking, and just, and I felt betrayed. Felt betrayed. Like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's like, it's not what a friend does, whatever that means. This is just like thing that comes. So when you come and you, yeah, like, I don't think that I disagreed with anything you said, honestly, right? In my processing of where I was at, you know, I wasn't so fucked up on ayahuasca that I couldn't like pose myself some really good questions, which I did, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
in this game for a while. I tried the old head game, but that just like wasn't it. Like
Yeah,
syntax fucking error. You can't think your way out of this paper bag, right? So it's
yeah.
like I searched, I asked, I looked for another like stone to stand on, right? I looked for another place to like hang my hat or like have my spirit be, but that's not, I didn't have access to that. There wasn't another place that I could find. And, I laid there for hours, thinking about this is why we came here, right? This is why we
Mhm.
came here. Go ahead and surrender, right? And there was just no way. It
Yeah, and
wasn't
you
going to
just weren't
happen.
ready.
Wasn't going to
Yeah,
happen.
which is like, oh man, because like that's the other thing I noticed on the journey is like I can have a willingness to surrender, but until like my chorus of parts, like my counsel, has like been like, okay, let's do it, and it doesn't even mean it's done without fear, but like it's not gonna happen.
But there's also some brilliance that's happening at the same time, right in that creative space, which is I'm being shown directly with a big fucking bright light this consciousness that I have that holds on so desperately and thinks that it has to make the decisions. It ends up being exactly the bright light, exactly the place that I needed to see. And that it is about surrendering my like knowing and thinking and I have to strategize in every single different direction, like, which is a character that's built in my head. It's a part of my own ego, that has to be let go.
Yeah.
So it ends up being the perfect prayer.
Right.
But fast forward, here comes old Angela, and she just, downloads on me some stuff. None of it wrong, but I'm just
Just not
energetically,
super sensitive to where we were, and
right. So energetically, and we had not
yeah,
repaired any, right?
true. Yeah.
So here comes this fucking cunt who's going to tell me a bunch of shit. And I got fucking, oh, excuse me. And
Oh,
I was like, isn't everybody supposed to be on their own thing? Like, how come I can't have my own fucking thing? What it is, and like you're over here telling me what to fucking, and like now
mm,
it's just like anger. People tell me what to do. It's like you're not me. You're not me. All sorts of shit has entered the chat then, and
mm,
it's honestly it's some of the same shit. It's just like we're just digging the hole deeper now,
mm-hmm.
digging the hole
Yeah.
deeper.
Well, and then later, like you started playing your guitar and singing, and like it was
That was wild.
so it was so beautiful. Like it was so I was like so happy. Like through this whole time, even though like I could tell you were crunchy and like there was all this stuff, it just it was not affecting me like in the same way. I was more like I'm cool with taking the space. And I was so happy to see you sharing your gifts and being out there and just like doing your thing. Like it just made me
I was
so
moving the
happy.
energy around.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was amazing and like everyone was loving it and it was so much fun and you were making people laugh and like just yeah, you were just shining. You were just shining your gifts and that made me so happy. And then I think something happened like after you had performed, like some waves came over you where it was like people were saying how good you were, and then there was just something happened and you like kind of closed back down or something
Yeah, I had to
happened.
get out of there. It was just like being around that many people, being that open was pretty tough for me.
Yeah.
Just a lot of energy floating
So
around.
then one of the shamans there, Amor, who literally like his name is Love. He is like very quite literally like an earth angel of some sort. Like he's I don't even know how to explain him. He's like the most beautiful integration of like masculine, feminine. And he's like kind of a slight person, like he's thin. So it even like, it's not
He,
like he's,
yeah,
how do
he's
you,
80 pounds soaking wet. He's probably like in his early 60s, maybe. He's like
yeah,
soft
but like
spoken.
beautiful, like
Right.
fucking beautiful human. And uh, I know he's like holding you through some stuff.
So I'll just tell this little story.
Yeah.
When when I first saw the shamans playing guitar, I had my guitar at this place, and I was like, I'll join the band later, you know. After I take the ayahuasca, I was like, no fucking way I'm getting up there. And I was pretty fucked up. This is some strong medicine. But anyway, then I got the courage and I walked up there, and walking was ridiculous. I could barely fucking walk. And so when I got there, it was pretty clear that I am not in any kind of state to like pick up a guitar and play it. So shamans just continue on to a song. And I sat there up in front of everybody and just did more processing, which is just sitting in the energy of the medicine as it washes over you in the waves like it does. And then you have your internal experience, whatever it is. And mine is just like, which is kind of the stance I took through the whole time. It's like, I'm kind of just hanging on. I'm really just hanging on. Like it's a storm and I'm just hanging on really for dear life. There's no really where to go. There's no comfort. There's no ease. I'm just like being like pushed. And all of a sudden, after, I was probably sitting there for 10, 15 minutes. I don't even know. My eyes were closed and I was just sort of like, you know, kind of vibing with the music a little bit, trying to be as relaxed as I could. Someone, with my eyes closed in the dark, put their hand on my back. And instantly, and I mean instantly, it was the softest, most loving, most delicate, supportive, and gentle touch that I maybe have ever felt in my entire life. And in the state I was in of being really uncomfortable, but like trying to being uncomfortable, uh, but just trying to maintain. But like, I'm really scared. I have lots of emotions. It was a glass of water to a dying man in the desert. It was so absolutely welcoming and calming. And then that, because I didn't know who it was, that person got closer to me, put their hand over to my chest, and held my heart. And I just felt so supported in, then I could actually relax into like how scared I actually felt. But here are these hands, these just perfect, loving, delicate hands. I felt like calling me back into my body and my being, that it was okay to feel everything that I was feeling in the moment. And so, wave after wave, this person sat with me, and it was transcendent. It was like, I don't know what kind of words I can say, but it was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely like staggeringly beautiful
Mm-hmm.
to be held and to be supported like that. It's like, oh, there is support on planet Earth. There is support on planet Earth. There
Yeah.
is support to being a human being. There is
Yeah.
support to having a heart. There is support to pain. There is support to like all of the torturous aloneness that I felt in this existence through my entire life. It was touching deep down into these places.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. And then I got up and walked around. And I ended up back in the same spot. I think I sang another song or something.
Maybe that
And
was it. You sang a song and then something
yeah,
after you like shut down when people were complimenting you.
I did shut down and I left. Right.
Mm-hmm. But then you came back. Anyway. What? Go ahead and tell it.
So I'm sitting there and back in the same spot. And all of a sudden, there's this hand on me in the same spot. I'm sitting in the same spot. Um, and then the person kind of gets, it happens in just a few seconds, kind of gets closer and is in the same way holding me. But my experience is different right away. Like I feel that like, oh, this is definitely different because uh, I feel like I'm being pushed.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like I'm being pushed instead of somebody just being perfectly supportive, like the perfect dancers. You see those ballroom dancers, they're just absolutely in sync. But now but the sync now is off. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just being pushed and I do not know who's with me. But then you said something and I realized it was you.
Mm-hmm.
And you said a couple things, but I couldn't even hear the words that you were saying. Like that was not allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I knew it was you, it was like, oh fuck no, right? No, no, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, anyway, I don't remember, like I know we had to talk later about that, and so I remembered that moment, and because I wasn't I wasn't in the same place as you, in the same, whatever. I wasn't really triggered, like fully triggered or holding on to anything. And I remember feeling into that moment and feeling like, do I actually want to give support? Like, can I give support from a place where it's purely generous? And then I thought, yeah, I can. And so I just remember like also putting my hand on your back. I also brought your hand to your heart so that you could connect with yourself, with your heart. And but I remember when you told me the story, it just felt like, oh, Amor was this like perfect, angel, exactly what you needed, it was super awesome, you know, all these things. And it was like, then you, like you came and blah, like you were pushing me and all this. And I just remembered like none of my intentions were around like any of that. And my only intention was to like support you and to actually bring your hand to your heart for you to connect with yourself instead of me doing that fully. You know what I mean? That was really the only intention. But I also, later on, when you told me like that had triggered something in me that I was like chewing on for a while because it just reminded me of, and I don't necessarily remember like the first time this happened, but like all of these memories where I had really good intentions to help people and just innocently going up and offering and then being met with this oppositional force of like shame and rejection and whatever. So it felt like, oh, this person can't see me. Like they don't even know my heart. They don't know my intentions. So they don't even know who I am. And there was something about that. It just felt so heartbreaking to me to be so like misunderstood in what I was offering. And then I know you and I like kind of talked about this where it's like really hard to have an objective person in the room. Like humans, we cannot be fully objective. So it's like there's always going to like the truth, like what the real truth is, hard to say. Like maybe there were unconscious things in me, like maybe there was like pushing, or maybe you were just pissed at me and you felt me, like I don't know. But it's just interesting, like all the different, you know, triggering things that happen. And then, is there anything else you want to share about like the ayahuasca journeys or the other?
Well, I have a question about this specifically, and I don't mean to be projective. This is a genuine question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, there seems to be something important that there has to be some kind of ground. There has to be some kind of connective ground that is present before you take actions or that you give or, so because there's in that point, and even if it's only from my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the bridge there between us doesn't exist, right? Um, and for sure, like absolutely, I think like not not being seen in your true intentions. Yeah, no, that doesn't feel good at all. Absolutely not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just wonder if you like, why couldn't you see? Why didn't you perceive the space or you know, the space that was there, right? Or the bridge that it doesn't exist. Like, why does that
Because
happen?
for me, it wasn't it wasn't a thing. For me, like I didn't there was nothing in me that was like pushing against anything. Like no, like I felt fully open and generous in that moment. Like I just felt inspired to help and support. And so there was no fear, there was no let me fix this, let me do it was like a check-in, okay? Am I do I have the availability? Do I have the generosity? And it was just like, yeah, I do. So I guess in that moment it just wasn't like I didn't
So, as an anxious person, right? My
Yeah.
availability and generosity is essentially boundless, right? But like,
But when you go into avoidance,
no, but what I mean is like, it's to me, it seems very clear, and I'm just trying to figure out how I'm leaning into you to try to sense how uh, the generosity and wanting to give is boundless in me as an anxious person. I always want to do that to connect, right?
mm-hmm.
But if there's not a space to land, like if the landing strip isn't like clear, and I, as an anxious person, have like laser night vision,
Mm-hmm.
ultra sensing into,
Mm-hmm.
oh, is the runway clear? Is the runway not clear? Do you still love me, or am I a piece of garbage? Right? Like, that deep Marco Polo is happening all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how come that like isn't in play? Like, where is that?
I think because you went from a place of anxiousness, which probably would have taken anything to reground, to reconnect, right?
Right.
But if that anxious energy goes into revenge or feels really hurt, then you're kind of entering into this energy of like counter dependence, where it's like,
Mm,
I will die on this hill. Like, fuck
mm,
you. I don't need you. Go die, whatever. And it's sort of like anxiousness wearing an avoidant mask or potentially just straight up avoidant flavor. But perhaps if I was in a state where, I don't know, I'm just trying to feel into this. If I'm not feeling either avoidant, because I was checking, because my energy in our dynamic is usually avoidant, usually more avoidant. I think I have some flavors of anxious stuff that come up sometimes, but there was no anxiousness and there was no avoidance. Like it wasn't coming from either of those places. And so, and I wasn't like, and I think again, I don't know, it maybe just because of, maybe it was sleep deprivation, maybe it was the medicine, I don't know. But just there was no thought of he's not gonna want this support or help. It was just like, this is Nick. He's my friend, you know?
mm.
So I just think for me, there was something about it. Like, if I had perceived that there was all this like anger and rage and all this hurt where you didn't want me near you, like then I wouldn't have. But I just wasn't.
Mm,
I didn't see it because
right.
also your back was to me, even
Mm,
though your body probably knew where I was because I was literally right there. And my energetic signature and all those things. You probably weren't anticipating me coming up to you.
no,
And
not at all.
I didn't plan it either, but I felt the inspiration to do that. And so I did. But yeah, so I don't really know. I don't have all the answers to that, but I do know that discussing it later, like it definitely touched on stuff, stuff that's there. Cause like, I have naively had a lot of very positive intentions for relation relationships and containers and different things, and I have been attacked a decent amount of times. So it's not like, that's never happened to me, but I think it must go back really far in somewhere in childhood. So I don't really know where it starts, but I do know like that was the main thing of anything that bothered me the most.
That interaction.
Yeah, that interaction of me knowing what my intentions were and knowing what I was doing and like even checking in and all of that. And then later to hear that reflection and the juxtaposition of basically Angel and Satan spawn like next to each other. And it was like, wow, that really doesn't feel good to know who I am and my intentions and even to feel like I had a lot of consciousness in that moment and just to feel so unseen and whatever. But I also understand like with our perspectives and whatever's going on, like our truth in that moment is it is what it is. Like I cannot control
Yeah.
how
No,
that came across
I
or,
think in
you
that
know,
moment we're exactly the same, unseen, both unseen.
yeah, feeling unseen, right? So
Right.
interestingly enough, like our unseen wounds, like feeling unseen, like so it just feels like that like energy, I guess attracted like, and then there was a moment of those triggers and through triggers like it's like a crack and the light can start coming in and being like, whoa, there's something here. So I feel like that's something that you know we've been exploring individually and then a little bit together.
Yeah.
And then I know we're like getting on an hour-ish.
2 hours.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa, this is long.
It
How
was
much
real
longer
long.
do you want to go? It's long. Should we like, I mean, I can recap the beach quickly, but I mean, so my main triggering, like my big stuff though, happened like 2 days later when we went to the beach and we had like a psilocybin ceremony and wow, like my hatred, like that's when I tapped into hatred. It was super strong and it was like I was like at the beach in Costa Rica, like it's beautiful, the sun's shining, like I'm playing, I'm jumping into the waves, and then the next moment I am like super aware of you and how much I hate you and how much I want you to go home. I'm like, I don't want you around me anymore, not in any way. But I don't remember what it was. Oh, I think what did we have a conversation? I don't remember what happened in between. Something happened, and I think it was like, so the next night you didn't come for the ceremony. And then I just think my parts and my projections, like there was stuff that was coming up and upon further reflection, like after, because I could see it, I could see what was happening and I could feel all the feelings and I was going in and out of it. I was like present moment and then I was like pissed. I was so pissed and just hating your guts really hard. And I would just go back. I was back and forth all day in heaven and hell and heaven and hell. And I'm like, what on earth is this? And then later on, I realized it was like the wounds that were being touched upon were like really early childhood, like mother, father stuff. Like probably both of the energies that I felt the most unsafe with my parents of not being seen and not, yeah, just not feeling safe because I started to remember that my dad would get like really cranky and then that would like be before he would probably have like a big explosion and then like everything would be ruined. And so I think I was like anticipating because I started to pick up like that you were angry and basically avoiding me and all this stuff. Like it became clear, more clear. And then I was just like, well, fuck that. Like that's not fair, you know? And then because of that distance and because I think of the what I perceived as a lack of participation in what everyone else was doing, it brought up like all these memories and things that I hadn't thought about in like years. So, and I was like, holy shit, like I felt really unsafe. And those were my parts. Like, I had wanted my dad to leave instead of being around us because then it was like he would have a big explosion and like there was no more fun. There was no more happiness. There was no more joy. It was like, nope, he's having a bad time, so everyone else is gonna have a bad time now because it's like this whole thing. So that was my piece of it. And I was just like, whoa. And for all the different things that we had gone through together, and like, even all the random shankings, like that was, I didn't love any of that. But this particular energy, like, was the most uncomfortable for me to be in that state of hating you so much and being super aware of you. And I wanted you to go away. That was that. Because I was like, you're not happy. You don't like this. Like, you don't want to be here. Like, fuck off then to wherever. Like, goodbye. Yeah. And just like putting all those pieces together, I was like, damn, I layered a bunch of stuff onto that. And I had the awareness like of it, but I didn't. And like, this was the interesting thing. Even though I had the awareness of it and I could see it and watch it, I didn't know where it was coming from. And when I was trying to work with it, it was like, nope, nope, nope. We want to be angry. And I was like, okay. And so even when I came back for a while, I was just like in this place where I was like, it feels good to be angry. Like this part wants to feel like angry, and she wants to feel validated. And there was something really beautiful about allowing myself the space and the time to just be so angry. Even realizing it was a projection, even realizing it wasn't like a fully conscious, expanded thing, but it was like, I let myself have that. Like, I just let her be in that. And then eventually, and then one of the other things was I decided like that I wanted to be really intentional in when we decided to like talk about this and like, you know, like do another podcast or what to do with our friendship, just because like there were like so many ruptures, some of them small, some of them big, but fairly big, and the thing that I know about us is like, we'll take our time, we'll take our space, we do our own work, we just do. Like, I just think this is who we are. And so it was my goal to be very aware of like what my intentions were around reaching out to you and like when. And so I was noticing like if I felt like, oh, I should reach out because, he reached out, or I should reach out because, I don't want him to think this. Like, so it could not come from a place of emotional caretaking or trying to make you feel better or, like do that. Even though I wanted to be able to assure you, but I knew I didn't have that I didn't have the generosity to do that authentically. So I was like, I'm not going to do that yet. Not out of feeling overwhelmed, not out of wanting like support. So I just had all these things and I was like, it must come from inspiration. Like I must just feel inspired to reach out. And then eventually I did. I just had a night where I was like, oh, I want to talk to Nick now. And I think originally you had said like you just figured it would be like a few months or something, but it ended up being like 2 months. And then we've been, talking and even this conversation is like, I feel like it's very helpful and it's enlightening. And I hope you don't mind me like laughing at you and you call me like a cunt, because there's something about that that's like, it's kind of funny in a way, like, past it, but it's not funny like for your parts that have felt so hurt and so misunderstood and so betrayed, not in that way. But there's something about being seen as like the villain and being projected onto that way, and like when the ego gets really spicy, and maybe it's a coping strategy for me, but there's something in it that I kind of like, where I'm like, you think I'm a horrible person?
Um, it was in a sharing circle after the second night where I happened to sit next to you, and then you were in the empowered anger.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
Right.
like yeah, we were doing the sharing and the root. We had the what's it
Yeah.
called?
There
The
was like whatever. There was the talking stick.
chakaruna. It was basically a root. It was like the Aya root or something, but it was like a twisted stick. Yeah, and then well, yeah, that probably precipitated the other thing that happened. But and maybe something happened around, yeah, where it was before that day where whatever happened, yeah, I was still like very, yeah, there was definitely like a righteous, angry part that just came up and was like,
Right.
you
So
don't,
in that time when you let it rip, right?
yeah,
You just let it fucking rip.
yeah,
And then you turned to me and you let it rip all over my fucking face, right? Like, no, not cool. Sort of like getting shanked, you know? It's like, that's
yeah,
not great.
big time.
But at the same time, right? Like, because it was so clear, right? It's such a clear projection. It's
Yeah.
just like, in the moment, it's like, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with me. Right.
No, no. And then, so interestingly enough, after that, because I don't think I have ever so publicly just let that out, I immediately had a huge shame backlash, like a huge
Yeah.
shame thing, which is why
You
I
should have.
moved, which I should have. No, I shouldn't have. No. Um, but yeah, that's why I moved because I was just like, because it just came out. It was just there. And it felt very connected and it felt just like this part wanted to speak and she wanted to be heard. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily even all about you, really. It
No,
wasn't.
you were channeling shit and pointing it at me, which is inconvenient for me, by the way.
But this is something that I think we haven't spoken about and we haven't worked out yet. Because I feel stuff here.
Well, this is just to like the pragmatics of projection, right? It doesn't feel good. And like in the grand scheme of things, it's like a little annoyance, right? Um, all that I would want to for you to do is just to say, you know, like I don't know if we can get out of projection completely. Like I don't know if that's so it might be in bounds, right? If it's something that you did to me, publicly shamed me and like pointed the guns at me in front of a bunch of people, after a couple times I might be like, nah, not doing that again.
Right.
Right. But
I
in the
was
context of,
like,
but in the context of what we're doing, right? And the work that we're doing
right.
and how our whole relationship creates this space for these things to come in, right? Okay. Okay. Right.
Yeah. What I will say to that is, I believe if it had not been for the extreme sleep deprivation, I'm not saying it like it excuses it, but for the sleep deprivation and still being in the medicine, I believe that is something I would have felt inside, but I don't think I would have.
That's okay. Just own it. You were
Yeah.
connecting with a part. You were
Yeah,
very righteously angry,
I
right?
was connecting with a part, and this part basically said, if you do not want awakening, if you don't want my assistance, if you don't want my support,
Yeah. Get the fuck
don't
out.
don't be my friend.
Right. Loud and
Yeah,
clear.
yeah. However, I don't think, I know that's not who you are because that's never been our relationship. but I also know it was a combination of like all of my stuff too, and that of being honest, giving guidance that I felt like was in alignment, but perhaps not attuned. And so it was like feeling victimized by a victim and then becoming the victim and then, persecuting back. So, but usually my MO is not that. Like I don't, oh, have I ever done that before?
What's that?
Like that kind of projection and public. Well, no, I know for sure publicly, I've never done that since we haven't spent that much time in public, but I don't, that's not my like MO. I
No,
know,
and
like I don't
that's why
do
in the
that.
moment for me, it's like, yeah, this don't feel good. I don't like this. Like, please don't just like,
Right. And I
don't,
can't,
whatever, avatar. But I get it. But also very clearly.
yeah,
Oh, this isn't about me at all. Like,
right.
I'm not even here. I'm
Hmm.
playing a role, which is the bad guy. I'm the
Hmm.
bad guy. That's fine. I
Yeah.
can be a bad guy all day long, honey.
Well, it's easier. I found it's easier for me to be the bad guy when I feel like especially if I feel empowered in it, I feel like I'm opting into it. But I will say, like, for that, I am sorry, like, genuinely sorry. And I can't imagine what that felt like to, like, I
But
would
that's
never
not
want that done
whatever.
to me.
That's not near close to like the worst feeling, right? That's like a throwaway one, right? That's
Really?
like, yeah. That's just like,
That was a throwaway for you?
yeah.
What was the worst thing then?
The worst thing, the thing that like rips me is
Yeah.
just like, and the reason I was so fucking mopey is that like I genuinely thought that I'd lost a friend, someone that I actually, outside of all the craziness that was happening,
Mm,
uh, that I cared about and relied upon and was part of my life, and that's done,
mm.
right? Now,
And you thought in that moment, like when I was just going off, is that what the feeling or the sense, or was this at some other point?
no,
Or was this
that's like part
after?
of it. That's like part of it. Like it sort of begins after sort of. So there's the misattunement of our first ayahuasca ceremony.
Hmm.
Then I didn't come to the second one, and you texted me a nice text, a sweet text, right?
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah, there
again,
was there was like yeah, there was a little bit
right.
of air in
But the
between.
thing I'm reacting to is that like, hey, we haven't done any repair work. There's still all this shit here in the road, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like flying high right over it. And so like I'm like, bitch, it's down here. And I was like, oh yeah, you don't feeling good? I don't want any more of that shit that was back there. And that's when it really started. I mean, like,
Mm,
right. That's when you really started getting angry. And
mm,
that's when it was the big time. Like, plus now there's tons of medicine in the mix, right? And like you
mm.
said, sleep deprived. I was not sleep deprived. I was like, I was getting more sleep than,
Really? Oh
I
my
was sleeping like a
God.
fucking baby. And I didn't go to the
Dude,
second ceremony, so I slept for like 14 hours or something.
I was getting 3 hours, 2 hours,
Yeah, no,
five
I was
hours.
sleeping like a baby. It was
At
amazing.
one point, someone stepped into my space and like
Yeah.
jostled my bed,
Freaked
so
you
I
out.
had a full freak out.
Right.
There was much sleep. Like as rough as it was super amazing. Like there was just like amazing stuff happening, but it was challenging. And then I got back and I was like, whew, the hard part's over. Nope. Then there was just like so much integration and like all kinds of stuff. But I definitely wouldn't take it back. Although I do wish that there was a way where we could have gone into that more like eyes wide open to kind of know to like probably speak a little bit more about some
Yeah.
of the
Hey,
underlying stuff that we were, but then I get it. Like life gets busy and also like I
right,
don't have time. Like I personally don't even always have time with myself to address everything that I see
right,
coming up that I am aware
right,
of.
right,
And then initially with all these things that happened, like initially I didn't even have the bandwidth or the resources or the space to go visit all that and to work on that too, because I was working on all these other things at the same time. So it was just like, but for me, there was kind of like this trust in me doing the work. Like, I know I'm going to do the work. This is who I am. And also this trust that you are the kind of person that I know also does the work. And we have always been able to come back to being able to have conversations. And I won't say they're always like perfect, but I feel like we give each other enough like benefit of the doubt and compassion to be able to hold reciprocal space for one another and to like hear it out, like the parts and all the stuff, and to not like damn anyone like forever. It's just like, okay. And if any of those things like became a huge problem, then we would really talk about it and like have our come to Jesus moment or whatever. But and we've had some talks like about like the shanking and stuff, but you're way better. You've gotten better at the shanking, and then I became a shanker, and so now we're just
right. But let's talk about something. I don't want this just to be for me. I want this to be sort of like something that we can do. But we gotta have some sort of like Marco Polo like check-in, right? Like a practice that we do. So it's like, life happens, like there's space, there's time, things happen, right?
right.
But I think it should be part of our communication all the time, right? Of like before we start, right? So that you're not up here and I'm down here, or like we're in different universes, right? Because we can be like I can turn on a dime, and I don't know exactly what it looks like,
Do
you
you
know.
mean like if because I feel like this happens naturally if we have like conversations, but you mean like if we ever have any in-person things? Is that what you mean? More of like an in-person thing or
Well, maybe. I mean, I think the same kind of like model or consideration could be made not in person too, you know. It's like, you pick up the phone and you just like race into something, you know. It's like, hey, you should do some communicating, when two modems talk, first they do the handshake, right? So it's like the energetic handshake, right? Like you
okay.
uh
I'm feeling a little confused slash lost about what you're referring to or what isn't happening. Like I don't have a context for what you mean
well, just
necessarily.
like miscommunication. So in the night of ceremony, you come up and say a bunch of things to me, but there's a bunch of noise and space in between me, right? But instead of getting to that and being able to perceive that that's there, right? You just go in, pure hearted, but into a space that's like not ready for it,
Right.
right?
Well,
Is that my responsibility? Is that your responsibility? Is it our responsibility? Could we just have a practice, like maybe even like a code word, right?
code word. I like code words. I teach my clients to have safe words and code words. So I like that idea of like, yeah, I'm not like we're not
Yeah, I'm
in
I'm
a
not
great, or
energetically
yeah,
open.
right. So that
Not
like I have
energetically
my
open for
clients
business.
do like a T for timeout. I'm fucking triggered. D like
Mm,
that, or some of my clients have had zombies, like apocalypse, bananas, whatever they want to say they have with their partner. But it's like I think what I'm just given that these this kind of situation has happened in this context of high challenge medicine container sleep deprivation, like lots of
right.
big
Lots of factors.
things that it seems like what you're talking about or what you're proposing has like something to do particularly for in-person high challenge situations related to medicine journeys, but perhaps also and the idea of having check-ins. Like this is what I'm trying to understand. Like for what circumstance and what context, and because given most of our interactions are like, phone or whatever, and we've had, some fun stuff with like podcast stuff related things, right? I can remember one very clearly right now that I apologize for because that was definitely my bad. But to, yeah, it feels like there is something there where, yes, when I have more resources available, I'm well rested, all those things, I feel like I am able to attune to people better. So I notice those things and I can feel into them.
Sure.
For whatever reason, with this, like none of that really mattered in that like ceremony space. I wasn't worried about it. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel any of that. Like it was just, I don't know if I was just so just inside and I wasn't so, I don't know. Or maybe it was just, super magical thing that was meant to happen and, really fun triggering moments so that I would have that thing triggered and like, I don't know. But it kind of sounds like maybe a both and situation where if maybe, but I feel like just in our conversations, like we're pretty good at being like, hey, this is where I'm at, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling stressed, or whatever. But
But I'll just put it in my quiver. Okay. I'll just for me at least.
well,
Time out. Time out. Time out
yeah, or like back
means there's stuff
away.
in the middle, right?
Yeah,
It's gonna have to
I
be
can
dealt
agree
with.
to that. Like I can
Okay.
agree to us having a timeout or a safe word. Which, do you want a safe word? Like, what if your hands are immobilized?
Then I will say time out.
I'm out.
Time out. Time out.
Time out. Okay, time out.
Time out.
Yeah.
There's there's stuff in the chat,
There's
right?
yeah, there's like unresolved stuff, like
Right.
unrepaired things, and like to proceed
Yeah.
with caution. Like,
Well, proceeding past this point is like,
no.
fraught, possibly damaging, right?
Yeah.
There's something that's got to come first. When we do that part, the first part, whatever, it doesn't have to be now, but that has to be first before we move forward.
Yeah.
In
I like that.
collaborative, generative, respectful, right?
Yeah. I like that. I can definitely
Sweet.
agree to that. Because then
That's awesome.
yeah, why not? Because, I mean, it makes sense. Like, and this is kind of what I was talking about before. It's like, ideally we want to be attuned to others, we want to be attuned to our partners and our friends and like, notice what's going on, right? And then in different states of consciousness, duress,
Yeah.
whatever,
Stress.
like
Yeah.
stress, lack
Yeah.
of sleep, hungry,
Yeah.
horny, tired, like whatever
Right.
comes up, if there's something where your body is already stressed in some level, like what is the acronym? It's like
Uh, harm or fart or something.
it's
Clam. Yeah.
you know
Hungry,
what I'm talking about.
angry, tired,
Yes.
fatigued. Barf.
Can't remember what it is, but yes, it's like hungry, stressed,
Yeah. It's an
angry,
AA thing.
tired,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Halt. Halts.
Halt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I add an S to it because I think it's hungry, angry, what's the L? Halt.
Hungry, angry, lonely.
Lonely.
Mm,
Lonely. Is that it? Yeah, maybe lonely,
mm,
tired, and then I think I add stress to it. Stressed. So halts. And then but in addition to that, it's like also whoever is the most conscious or who is able to share their like what's going on, because like yes, ideally, if a person's regulated and attuned, they can feel into that, right? And
Sure.
then maybe ask some questions. But the other person, if they've got this stuff, but they're not saying like, "Hey, I'm dysregulated," and a person in that nervous system state isn't always going to be like, "I am in freeze state," or "I am in
No.
fucking sympathetic state," or whatever. Like, not even having that awareness because it's just the nervous system is being flooded with like cortisol and adrenaline and just like norepinephrine, like all this shit.
Yeah.
But it's like whichever person has the most consciousness and availability in that moment would like try to call it like, I'm seeing something. What's going on? Is this what's happening? And that person
Yeah.
would be like,
Yeah.
or the person that it's happening to can be like, this is what's happening. Like, hey. And then you can have your own symbols, whatever.
Right. But I like it. This just means we got to deal with something else before we move forward.
Yeah, I like that. So, very good.
Do you feel heard? Do you feel seen?
I do. I feel like we're in a way, way, way better place than we were in February. Also, I've had a lot more like eye-opening awareness of just like these old things that seriously, like stuff I have not thought about how many decades? 4 decades?
Oh, yeah.
Like really that was there this whole time. And then it was just
Mhm.
like such an interesting like set of circumstances that like brought all of that out. And it was very uncomfortable and it was very challenging. But then I felt like there was a lot of like really beautiful things that also came from that. Like for me to see you traveling, to see you saying yes to that, to see you in Costa Rica, to have other people get to experience you and see your light and your joy and your gifts and just your presence, the gift of your presence, and to delight in that was very nice for me to see, even when we weren't connecting.
Even when you hated my guts.
Yeah, even when I was like, not now, I felt proud of you. I felt happy
Hmm.
for you. I felt like he deserves this and so much
Hmm.
more.
It's very nice.
And I know you made a lot of friends from it too. And it was nice. It's nice when you have a friend and then other people also appreciate that
Yeah, you're
person.
like, hey, check it. Yeah, like I'll vouch for this motherfucker.
Look what I
You got to
found. He's
check him
cool,
out.
right?
You
And
know.
then everyone's like, yeah, they're really fucking cool. And then
Right.
like, and then there's these relationships that come from that. And like that was beautiful for me. Like
Hmm.
that's what I got out of it.
Hmm.
Even if we weren't actively connecting there because of
Hmm.
our stuff.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, I just thought that like you were ashamed of me. I mean, I take some pretty liberal agency when it comes to like, oh, she hates me. Probably all these things too. Just like that's easy.
Now, I did not approve of what you were wearing on the beach because that was pretty nerdy, but
Well, okay, so beach day, right? Beach day to
yeah.
me is like the seventh circle of fucking hell. Like
Yeah.
that sun would
Oh
have
my God.
fucking toasted me. So I wasn't taking any
Yeah,
precautions,
you were
right?
just like, yeah, no.
I was like, I'm not doing that.
What I wanted was a nighttime, like,
Yeah, so we go to the
like
beach at like 5.
four or five, because
You
it's
see
going to
the
be a 4 or 5.
sunset,
Watch the sunset, the nighttime vibes. Maybe we build
have
a
a
little fire,
bonfire.
a bonfire on
Yeah.
the beach, so we're not getting like that was talk about like getting like fisted like in the ass
Mhm.
like that. It was like psilocybin post ayahuasca and like direct super hot Costa Rican sun with relentless brutal waves and volcanic sand. Like it was the sand
Well, I didn't even take my
was
shoes off.
like,
I didn't take my shoes
dude,
off.
that sand. Okay, so you were being practical and good for you. Your the sand was so hot and it was like black because it had like volcanic something in it,
Yeah.
which is great for the food, and like the
Yeah.
food was amazing and nourishing and all that, but like to step on it, it was like literally burning the bottom of your foot like
Yes. Yes.
fucking crazy. And
Right.
like all I wanted was a nice, like after the ayahuasca, like I just wanted a nice little mushroom
Relaxing.
journey and
Yeah.
like peaceful
Right.
and fun and not having to worry about reapplying sunscreen and not having
Yeah.
to deal with volcanic sand and being barefoot and anyway,
Right.
but yes, so I
Yeah. So
I agree with you on that.
I got to go to the seventh circle of hell, take some mushrooms, which, I don't, at that point, I was like, I don't think I ever want to do any drugs ever again. And my
Well,
best
the
friend hated me
medicine
now.
stacking is a lot. It's
Right.
honestly, it has given me so much insight into
Right. We should
that,
have
like
done
the
grounding. We should have been
consciousness,
grounding. There's
grounding,
probably some
yeah.
grounding stuff that we could have done. That was kind
Grounding,
of
containers, yeah.
right.
But all of that was like a super huge learning experience. But I will say, somehow in the integration house after when we went to that other location, like, oh, we had had a couple of talks and chats. That's what it was. So we did have that little repair moment when we left the ceremony house before we went to the integration house. Like we had a chat that morning.
Mm.
So that helped a bit, but then there was still more to move through.
Yeah. A lot more.
And then I just feel like we were so
Entrenched.
charged up
Yeah.
individually that we were like, the thought of trying to dive into this right now or the thought of meeting in person ever again at this point is feeling like, whoa, my nervous system does not even want that. Because that was what, like was it like a couple weeks ago
Mm.
when we first, I don't know, that at some point we were just like, I said something like, well, where do we go from here? And I was like, in-person stuff. And you were like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
right? But now it like, even
Yeah.
now that feels really
Yeah.
different. Like even,
Let's just keep at least 1,000 miles, bare minimum.
but honestly, like how my nervous system feels now is it feels very different.
Mm.
Like
Oh,
even
yeah.
from that space. So I just feel like there's been a lot of like healing and repair and like just
Plus, now it's like you can time out. There's something here where we move forward.
I know, imagine that. Like the skill that I teach all my clients, I did not implement for us
Right.
or didn't think about it. Of course,
Time out.
well, but part of the other thing too is I think most people think, okay, romantic relationship or this container, because that's usually what I do it for. But then it's like for like any friendship or any, especially when there's like major attachment stuff, there's stuff there. I think it's important.
Well, I think this goes back to what you were talking about. Guys and girls can't be friends, right? It's just that, like, it's actually a higher level of like maintenance and like
Yes. Right.
integration and like
Yes.
because all of that other stuff is going to be beamed that way, either covertly or overtly. But there's more there than say brothers or
Yes.
sisters or.
Good point. Right. So that's already loaded. And then, anyway, we could probably have like a million conversations about that. But, well, if you've made it this far, folks,
Right.
leave us a comment. Say, I'm
Can I do a
lasting
shout
till
out?
the
Do
end.
you mind?
What's that? Yeah, do a shout out.
Oh, just wanted to say hello to my beautiful, lovely, wonderful gal. I love you
Yeah.
very much.
Aw.
Yeah. If you watch this, man, I'm like, it seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot. But if you made it this far, just wanted to say hello.
Aw. That's super sweet.
Yeah.
She would love that.
I hope so. I like to let her know.
Yeah. I
You
know.
you have any shout outs?
No, not really. I mean, like, I don't know if my like fit for service friends are gonna listen to this. Maybe they will.
So I don't know when we started recording. It's at 2:35 right now. I mean, it is pretty long.
Two and a half hours.
how do you feel about publishing this? How are you feeling?
I'm fine. I'm fine with publishing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it will serve people. Like that's kind of like that was the point of talking about this is
Right.
just
It is true. It is true.
to serve people, but I don't know if anyone is that dedicated to listen to. We could do a one and a two part and just split it up. And then all we
Yeah.
have to do is, yeah.
I would be interested. Like us trying to speak about it in a way that people can actually join in and go for the rides and feel the things and be influenced and affected by it, you know? Because it's so personal to us, I think it makes it harder for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like vulnerable to talk about these things, but I mean, part of it is like we're talking about it after we've done our processing. Like we didn't try to like get two
Right.
dysregulated nervous systems in the room, be like, hey, let's work this out now,
Right.
which you could try, but I don't really recommend that to anyone because you need at least one regulated nervous system in order to have a shot, or at least, I mean,
Right.
people that are very skilled, and then another person that might be dysregulated, but that's willing to be dysregulated and be visible and be in that space and to be brought back in. So it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't recommend that. And
If there's anybody who made it this far, thank you for coming with us. Also, if there's any kind of these dynamics in this, and we brought up a whole shit ton of things, you know, but to zoom in on, you know, because there's so many things that we brought up that could be separate whole discussions specifically about something and how they interact with different things. But if anybody has one of those, just drop it in the doobly doo and we'll,
we'll get them. We see the comments.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
anywho, Angela,
Yes.
I thank you.
Thank you.
And I
I'm
love you.
glad we did this. I know this was long, but also I I'm very grateful for us that we've
You're a real spicy meatball, you know what I'm saying?
am I
Yes. Yes, you are.
spicy? Like, is that a good thing?
Yes. It's
Okay.
way better to be a spicy meatball than some fucking
Like
doldrum
a
dolt.
flaccid meatball, like a
Yeah, yeah,
matzo ball.
yeah,
Actually, I do like matzo balls, but yeah, like a Melba toast ball.
yeah.
Why it's not a
No,
thing.
you ain't no Melbatos. You got some kick. I'll take kick all day long.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, you're not so bad yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. So Emotional Podcast, episode 39. 2 hours and 37 minutes in. Thanks for the
Can't
ride.
break this down. Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.